Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Sheri Stilson, who is the Executive Director of Student Television Network. Also, though, she has had over 20 years of experience in the entertainment and event industry, graduating from San Diego State University. With 2 student Emmys, Sheri began her career as a stage manager for the San Diego Padres and working as a technician at SeaWorld. She has been a TV producer for reality competition and game shows for Hollywood to draw from. She also has held a position as event supervisor at the Legoland California Resort and led teams through large-scale seasonal and education events, daily operations, and press junkets for 10 years in a variety of roles. It's also been my pleasure to work with Sheri for, I think, 4 years now in the Thrive program, as well as individually. And she has an incredible success story to share with you today through her work at STN. Welcome, Sheri. And before we dive into things nonprofit.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, I'm so happy to be here. And I'm a California girl, so I'm a beach lover. Several times on our calls, I've come from there. I'm just nature, beach, that's where you'll find me. I started as a theater major, wanted to be on Broadway, so I'm not the shyest person you'll ever meet. But then I ended up segueing into just entertainment in general, and a different path opened for me. But yeah, I'm wearing flip-flops even right now.
Love it. I love it. So let's talk about back when you started at STN. It was your first time being an executive director, and STN had just gone through some changes. Can you paint the picture for us of what was going on for STN as you stepped into this new role?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, COVID. So lucky me, I am just about coming up on my 5th year anniversary this August of 2025. I started in August of 2020. So the world wasn't doing much. I wasn't producing, or even Legoland was shut down. A lot of those jobs you mentioned weren't happening. And then I was recruited by some people that I'd known from Legoland that also knew I was a former TV producer. I was recruited for this position because the former CEO of STN was moving on, and there was some changes in the board and the organization in general. So they asked me to jump on Zoom and learn more, and I said, sure. And that led to a couple more Zooms, an interview, and then I got the job. And then I landed and I thought, oh my goodness, I have no idea what I'm doing. I am a fish out of water. It was a huge compliment to be recruited. Obviously, they saw something in me that would benefit at STN, but I didn't know what it meant to be an executive director or to work for a nonprofit. And so here it is, human resources, finances, insurance paperwork, all these things I'd never done as a producer. And I thought, wow, this is definitely more than I bargained for, but I was up for the challenge. And needless to say, FTN was in a broken place. when I joined, and I didn't know that necessarily till I was already inside the castle walls.
Yeah. So tell us, I remember a few things you had, they had before hiring you, I think they had reduced their staff. Like, what were the things
Right.
that, let you know that things were broken?
Oh, yeah. As I was going through the interview process, I was made aware that most of the staff had moved on, especially due to COVID, right? So that's the mentality: conserve everything. And the biggest event STN does is our annual convention, and that had just been canceled in March of 2020 when the world shut down. So there was a huge revenue stream that was gone, and I was aware of that part. But then I was just told, it won't be as difficult because, we're virtual and there you don't have to plan a convention for next year. So it'll be pretty simple. I thought, okay. But then you come in and you're dealing with a stream of revenue that now we're having to refund people. There was contract in place for the future convention that I had to get out of. And we're talking in the hundreds of thousands. I mean, probably over 1 million total. So there's just all these obstacles and then no staff. So I was working virtually. They had shut down an office that had the CEO, an administrative person, a financial person. And then now I just had this lovely board of directors. There was 10 of them, and they were supportive, but I don't think they even realized what we were up against, to be fair. I don't think they really knew the day-to-day of what had been happening in the office. So they had a lot of faith in me, that's for sure. And I will say, actually, at the same time I came on, our education coordinator, Josh Cantrell, came on. So they were picturing, let's shift more to curriculum and all this stuff. So they were paying two of us. Everybody else was volunteer. And then we just had to figure the rest out.
Yeah. So you went through a lot, but before we go into the messy middle of the sandwich, let's just hear about where you are today because I really want to celebrate that. So, what does STM look like today? Your team size, revenue, what is the curriculum programming? Give us the rundown.
Wow. Well, what a difference 5 years have made. I know I emailed you super excited last week just to share the celebration with you that we have grown in leaps and bounds in the 5 years. So the first 3 years that I was here, we were in the red as far as revenue versus expenses. And in the last 2 years, we have now finally made it to the green, but we have grown from 180,000, I want to say, the first year to this year, we reached over $1 million for the first time. And I was very excited. That was a milestone I've been watching for. And I believe the math, that's like a 490% growth in revenue in the 5 years that I've been here. And I don't mean so I'll go to your next part of the question. What does the team look like now?
Yeah.
We still are pretty small but mighty. We have 2 full-time staff, and then the education coordinator is still here. And I've now contracted somebody to help with the convention. We've really increased the role of our tech supervisor, so to speak, Travis, who got us through all that COVID when we had to adapt the entire business. And I have a strategic growth partner. The board has downsized a little bit, but my core group of volunteers and people that I trust has grown. This convention, we had, I think, 62 volunteers helping. And my first convention was virtual. So quite a bit of growth. And even in membership, the first year I was here, I believe there was 180 members. And this year we hit around 650. So more than doubled in size. The education initiatives have grown. We're running 2 summer workshops for teachers. We've toyed with the idea of now regionals. So just tons of things. Our contest entries are through the roof. The engagement with those is exponentially more than it was 5 years ago. So running at full steam ahead. I don't know how it's been 5 years because I look back and I know the journey and it wasn't an easy one, as you're fully aware of. But I kind of was surprised last week at the success, because if you don't pause sometimes to really celebrate that, you think, wow. But it wasn't an easy road, but I'm very happy to be here now and celebrating those accomplishments. I mean,
Yeah.
there was several times I thought I wasn't gonna be here. Several times that I was ready to run for the hills and say, I don't know what I just signed up for, but you picked the wrong girl. But then something kept me going.
You kept going, and there was a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm, a lot
Yeah.
of, that kind of doubt you just described. And
Mhm.
how does it feel now, today, as you go about your day-to-day running things as a leader?
Oh, I feel much more comfortable in my skin, and I'm just proud of where we've come. The victory is not mine, it's all of ours. And I'm fully aware of that. That had Sheri tried to do this on her own, I either would have been fired or I would have quit, or STN would just have dissolved by now. It is a team effort. That's how I operate. That's the producer mentality also. Producer alone on set is worthless. You need the camera people and the sound, and you need the people in the office making the call sheets. So I valued that from the beginning, and it is a skill I was able to carry over. But I'm just really proud of where we are. I feel a little more relieved on the daily if I'm thinking about spending or choices to make. I used to second guess myself quite a bit in the beginning, and I quickly sought help. I was a fish out of water, and I think it was just within a couple of months that I sought help. But yeah, today I can sit and say, wow, what a wild ride, but very happy to be where we are and looking forward to what the next 5 years might look like.
Yeah, I am too. So let's peel the curtain back for folks a little.
Mhm.
What did that journey look like? What are some of the kind of standout wins and maybe standout flaws and feelings? Because I want people to really hear, like, growth is, when we just look at the before and after, it's easy to think like that it's linear and it's consistent, but it's never that way. It's kind of a roller coaster. And I like to say, like, the best we can do is smooth out the ride a bit. So tell us, like, what are the key things that you did or didn't do that you think led to where you are now?
Well, in the very beginning, when I knew I was in deep and my people skills were only going to get me so far, I did seek help. So I think I found different Facebook groups and things. I started researching what are executives doing, because even as a producer, there's a lot of community. So I was seeking community immediately. What are these executive people up to? What is a nonprofit? And then I somehow came across a small training you were doing. It was just like a few week get your finances on track. I can't remember the exact name of the first one I signed up for, but I just knew I needed help. I didn't tell anybody, because at the same time, I didn't really want them to know that I was struggling. So there was a lot of insecurity there. I could say the beginning of the journey was scary, and I wasn't sure that I was the right person. Although they have assured me every year since that I was and always have been. I guess I proved them right. But in that moment, I just remember feeling really alone and asking personal friends that are lawyers, like, what do you do? How do you track projects? How do you track employees? And I'd also always worked for these big umbrellas like Hollywood. You're working for Animal Planet or Netflix, or I'd worked for HGTV, and there's always this godfather up there, and I'd never been quite at the top like that before, where there wasn't safety. So I signed up for your program, met some people, but then I just asked a lot of questions of a lot of people, and then eventually I remember you talking to me about getting help, because I just knew I needed it. And I was afraid to spend. So not only was I insecure, but I have this budget I don't know what to do with. It's COVID. So I didn't want to spend money. And when you first talked with me about the program, even though I knew I needed help, I was like, I can't spend that and I can't tell them. But I did tell my work bestie, Nanda, who was to this day, my only full-time staff. I told her I found this program. I think I need help, but I know I can't do it. And then I know she got together with you and they gave it to me as a Christmas present. And I never thought they'd say yes. So even there, a lesson is if you need help, if you're insecure, definitely pursue it. Don't be afraid to spend and don't be afraid to say that. I think it was key that I was willing to be vulnerable with where I was at and at least tell someone that was safe, because it turns out they had wanted the former CEO to go through some sort of training. They had wanted to work more as a cohesive group. And when I came in, the board and the office were more on the divide. So I was also dealing with that. So I would count that as a win that I spoke up when I needed it. And then I found the people that I trusted and just took the plunge. So
Yeah, I hear two lessons in there. One is, spending to get help and adequate help, right? I remember like there was a big difference between the kind of short-term program you first joined with me and the
yeah,
Thrive program, which you joined, which is like comprehensive support. Comprehensive support is kind of what you need to, change the growth trajectory of an organization.
mhm,
But the other lesson I hear in there is around, and I see this in the Thrive program. I'm sure you've seen it with other folks in there as well. We call them our Thrivers. They need to shift a mindset often from doing work and being in a role where you're accountable for doing the job well means doing the tasks well. And really being an executive director or a CEO means making good decisions and knowing how to delegate decision making. And that's very different. And when the ability to have good decisions made for a business or a nonprofit means getting the people you can trust and having a system that works to help you trust them to make decisions. No executive director, no CEO is going to know it all. If
mhm,
you do, you're wrong. And no board is going to feel confident if you claim that you do. It is actually confidence at that level of leadership looks like these are the things I know, these are the things I know I don't know that I will
mhm,
be delegating to somebody who
yeah,
is more of an expert in them. And I hear you saying that in your story too. That was a lesson you had learned from your production experience that really
absolutely.
like I don't want to say real delegation, but I've been thinking about there's this big difference between delegating tasks, like can you do something for me? And delegating outcomes, like really letting people run with things to get a result.
There's something to be said about finding your people in any business and in life. And I know in Hollywood, one of my favorite directors is Steven Spielberg. I've always admired him. And if you look at the credits on his films, he's worked with some of the same people from way back in the day, the Kennedy Marshall team, way back to ET, because you find them and you trust them. And I value that. I'm a people person through and through. So I've worked hard to create a core community here, whether it's the staff, the board, my volunteers, even members. Sometimes they're not the right fit member. So I surround myself with people that operate outside of my zone of genius, as you would say, people that challenge me and make me better. And it's paying off.
Yeah. Let's go there even further because I know there had been some real challenges to work through at the board level. You've brought on a lot of team members, you've let go team members in different
Mhm.
ways. So tell me
Right.
some of the things that you faced and what worked and what didn't work when it came to growing the right team.
I would say the first couple years were the growing pain phase. First I sought the help and then I needed to learn the environment, learn the personalities, learn the finances. So I spent a lot of time just trying to stabilize. But, when I came in, I was told, and this could happen anywhere, this is how this person operates. This is what this school's known for. These ones always cheat and these ones always win. Or, and then I just decided early on I was going to form my own opinions and I was going to build my own relationships. So you don't know who you trust yet. So it took me literally 1 to 2 years to pull some weed and do some cleaning. And I wasn't always popular. I'll admit that, because I started challenging the status quo, what had always been. And maybe I wasn't always right in it, but I'm not a fan of saying we always do it this way. And I didn't know anything about that. We're celebrating 25 years with STN, so I came on year 20. There's a lot of history there. But what I did try to do was always honor that, honor the legacy. I called former presidents of the board. I called different committee members. I called teachers that I'd been talked to about. And some of those teachers have become some of my closest allies to this day because I formed my own opinion. And so I would say that too. Like, you never know what environment you're walking into, handle it with grace. And even the former CEO, she got at the end to this point. She was very pivotal in creating the convention and the largest revenue stream we have. And she and I are friends. We've talked and shared our own stories because I was going to form my own opinion of her. And she did the same as me, just a mutual respect for one another. We're not the same. We operate very differently, but we were just different seasons. I like to look at it. But even with the board, there was absolutely challenges. When I came in, I would say half the board was more involved than the other half. And they just wanted me to do certain things. So at first I did. I said yes a lot more. I signed contracts for several years of convention. Here's my name on all this paperwork, and I've been there like 2 months. But I just wanted to go along and trust them. But eventually I just started feeling resistance, and it wasn't pleasant. And, there was conflict with a particular board member, and it didn't feel good. That's also just how people issues will always be there, but it was very disturbing and dividing. And eventually we all just had to share where we were coming from. And a couple board members stepped out, and things improved from there, but not immediately, because although those people had their relationships. And, if I met those people at a different time of life, I truly believe we could be friends. We had a lot in common. It's unfortunate that the tension here caused that division, but I had to still do what I thought was best for the organization and for myself. As the leader, you have to make tough decisions. And part of the Thrive program, one of the things I cling to with staff, committee, board, is the get it, want it capacity to do it. So there was board members that didn't get it. And by I mean the culture, the change that was coming, the shift from a working board to an oversight board that happened under the umbrella of the Thrive program. There was just a lot of resistance, but I think it's worked out, and those people did great things. I still have respect, again, for the legacy and the role that those people had in getting us to where we were when the baton was handed to me. And then in the next phase of the board, there were still some wrinkles to iron out. Again, good people with good intentions, but it just wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
And there was too much conflict and non-alignment with the goals. So we've been working hard to set clear goals. And when people resist those or have I just felt there was a lot of power struggles. I've had several power struggles since I've been here. And the last 1.5 to 2 years has been the most stable, the most peaceful. And I could have walked out and I think they would have really been in trouble. Not to say they couldn't have hired another executive director, but none of them knew what it was like to be handed what I was handed and have the skin in the game every single day trying to rescue this organization from bankruptcy. So, I got feisty along the way, but I had to stand up even for myself. Like, I'm not going to be talked to that way. I'm not going to be treated that way. And I'm certainly not a puppet. If that's I have my own ideas, and it just was really awkward for a while.
Yeah. I think it's easy because there's this power dynamic that a board can fire an executive director or CEO. And it's easy to fall into that space of, well, then I'm going to do what the board tells me to do because you get into that mindset of they're my boss. But we really flipped that. And I think I remember there were many calls where we talked about the drama that was going on and the relationships and needing to hold what you said a moment ago, that you have to do what's best for the organization. You have to hold, that's the level of integrity comes from continuing to do what's best for the organization in spite of a power dynamic, sometimes throwing your weight, saying, I will, I'll leave,
Yeah.
if we don't do what's right for the organization and put individual relationships ahead of that. But you held your ground but I think it's important for people to know, and you shared this, that it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's not like you
Right.
just held your
Oh
ground
man.
once and everything was great, right?
Right. It's a marathon, not a sprint, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Luckily, I'd already run half marathons in my life, and I know that it's a long game. But the difference in this and my other environments is it's a consistent group of people aside from the turnover of the board. In producing, a lot of times you only work for 6 weeks on a gig or 3 months, and then if it's tense, you don't work with those people again, or you go on to the next one. So this was the first time in a long time, other than Legoland, that I'd really had to like stick it out for the good. And I wasn't sure I even wanted to be here. They found me, remember? So I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't sign up for all this drama, too much drama. But for some reason, they thought I was the right person. And along the way, you start building those relationships that you don't want to leave.
Mhm. Yeah.
The Shondas and Josh and the staff that stayed with me, my Travis and Grant, and these great people, Paul, I'm not going to be able to shout out everybody, but you know who you are if you're on my team. And some of those great teachers that then it's like, I'll do it for them. And another reason those first 2 years were too tough, were so tough, was also because of the COVID. So remember how I said my first convention was virtual. So
Yeah.
it took almost 2 years for me to actually be on the ground and see a convention happen. Being a girl that loves to be on set and wheel and deal, I thrive, and that's my favorite time of year. Unfortunately, it only happens once a year. So the rest of it, I am on Zoom a lot. That was hard for me. It really changed. It wasn't feeding into the best parts of me. So I had to find other ways to have healthy outlets. But as I'd been literally climbing uphill the entire time and constantly learning, fighting, I feel like getting people on board with the new trajectory. When I got closer to that convention, there was no way I was going to step out before I saw it. So
Yeah.
we did, and that was a hybrid one. But then once I tasted that, I haven't looked back as much after that. And now that's just another area where we're growing, and that's very rewarding for me, because that's the party. That's our Super Bowl of the year. So
I love that. I know you briefly mentioned that your board transitioned from a working board to an oversight. I want to make sure we touch on that. And before we run out of time completely, I also want to touch on your revenue journey, because I know there've been a lot of times where we talked about, oh, these other strategies aren't for you. You're going to stay focused. And so I'd love for you to be able to share with people what you focused on, but more importantly, why, and what staying focused on one type of revenue stream looked like and what the gains were. So let's touch on the board quickly, and then we'll touch on revenue. So what did the board transition look like? If you just kind of highlight for people, what was your working board, and what is the oversight board experience like?
yeah, the working board when I joined was they just had their hands in more pots. There was full budget approval each year, and there was several more committees, a governance committee, a fundraising committee, just committees. But I noticed that many of them weren't functioning. So they were there for the sake of having them. But there was just different pockets of people doing projects, and it had worked for them. But there also was some that were doing more, some that were left a little bit out of that inner circle. And I didn't really know the difference either way because I walked in and that's just how it was. Again, I'd never worked with a board like that. So then when I was in the Thrive program and constantly learning and starting to do my own research, but having the model there of oversight, so they're there to ensure we have a budget, not approve a budget, ensure that we have goals and a clear plan. Basically, that made sense to me because how can 10 people really dictate effectively what's happening in an organization every day? And there was even very differing opinions. So I just slowly started laying that foundation and invited them to the board retreat. And they were open to it. But I think the real turning point was the end of year one when one president, her term was up and there was a new president coming in. And some of the board members were also terming out. So I want to say there was like 3 or 4. And I think you were on the call with us. And there was just this mentality we have to immediately replace those board members. We need to do this. And then you helped us pause. And they didn't really want to listen to me at that moment, not out of disrespect for me. I don't mean it that way. It was just more like the board was the one that made the board decisions, right? So where is this coming from with this new way of thinking? And they did pause, which I thought was amazing, and didn't just bring in a bunch of wrong fit people just to fill seats. It's not about that. It's about the right thing. So from that point, I knew they were open to this new shift, and we have been able to slowly go in that direction oversight ever since. And there's still been growing pains along the road, a couple board members that wanted it back the other way. And we had to actually update our bylaws because our bylaws did not reflect an oversight board. They gave more power to the board than to the staff. But I think they now see that it wasn't us versus them. My board, I know they have my back. They've been with the ones that are still here, have been with me through those rough moments. And even when I called and said, if this thing happens, I'm going to have to resign, those board members stood by my side because I think they're seeing the payoff. So that also took a few years. I would say it isn't until more the last year that we're effectively oversight, because sometimes there's still projects they want to do. And I have to remind them, don't go off in a corner and create a project that doesn't align with our goals and mission. But we're all on the same page now, and they're there when I need them. They're great sounding boards. When they do work for STN, they take off their board hats and they're more functioning as volunteers, and they're happy to do that.
Yeah, I love that. All right. I know everybody loves to hear about revenue. So, Al, what has been the secret to the financial gains?
Oh, man. Just constantly poring over numbers. I'm not an accountant or anything, but I do enjoy math. So in the quiet of the day with my Spotify list on, I pour over numbers, and I just surrounded myself with a team there. I have a CPA who was with STN before, and God bless her, she's still with me now. I did lose some people in the transition just because of trust, but I have the CPA that's been here, and then I brought on an accountant to do the reconciling and pay the bills. But they've taught me a lot. And then I have another staff member that looks at the budget with me, also treasurer. But where can we shave in those conservation times, the beginning for conservation, right? And then once we had got through a good virtual convention where we had a little bit of money, then I just became more comfortable spending to make more. And that with convention, looking at it every year, how can I spend less and make more? It's kind of a fun game for me. I do nerd out on it a little bit. And I always tell them I run a tight ship, but then I know we have money over here if I really need to pay for, those food trucks to come in or something fun, I'll do it. But so it's just been a slow and steady race of shaving, consolidating the line items on my budget, and not being afraid to spend for an assistant. I used a program called Great Assistant to hire mine, and it cost several $1,000s. I was afraid of that at first too, but well worth its weight in gold in finding a right match person for me. And Michelle was great with us for a while, but not being afraid to spend. And then I know now we've gone from that 180,000 to over 1 million. So each year it's literally 2 to 300,000 more. And a lot of that is revolving around convention
and sponsorship,
and
right? That's your
sponsorship.
primary.
Yeah. So that's something where early on I was told, oh, here's this grant. You should be applying for grants. We're a nonprofit, or we need more donors, Sheri. We need more donors. And I totally agree with them. But then in the Thrive program, I've also learned that, yes, there's individual donors, there's corporate donors, there's grants, but not every nonprofit should be raising money the same way. And if I tried to do the Giving Tuesday and do this grant, it's taking so much of my time and spreading it. So from the beginning, I have been focusing specifically on corporate sponsors. We already had some good relationships when we got here, and those are mostly tied to convention. They have booths, but they come and do educational sessions and things like that. So we've got great sponsors like GoPro and Canon and Sony, Blackmagic Design, B&H, to name a few. Some universities like Syracuse, ASU, Cronkite, Hofstra. Some really great people involved. And I have many of those people's numbers in my phone because I've been working hard over these last 5 years to build personal relationships with them, to know things about their children. So I just focused on one thing, and that's a people thing that I love. And that's thriving to where we're now making more money in sponsorships. And actually, we're starting to do annual sponsorships, and even these summer workshops I'm doing in a couple of weeks. We had sponsors come to us and say, oh, I saw this on your website. I want to sponsor. And then some of the other loyal returning partners are there as well. But I couldn't do it all. So I knew that in the revenue building, I had to focus on fine tuning my budget. Where were we spending and why? Make sure I understood it. So there was things like shipping and freight that we weren't using, and I just shaved those and put that money somewhere else. Then I hired on those staff to do the jobs I don't want to do and free up my time. So now I can work with these sponsors. But I am excited that we did over 100,000 in sponsorships this year. So that's, right there, that's a tenth of our budget just coming from that. A lot of the others is convention registration. So we're trying to grow our memberships. How do we look at what our brand is? What does STN have to offer? And how can we make money? It's by growing our audience. To do that, you have to give them something they want. You have to fulfill those needs, help them empower those future storytellers. And now I'm finally going to be able to move into the donor component. We've been toying with that for a while, but I know better than to just send an email to a bunch of people that I have on a spreadsheet and say, give us money, and then not have a follow-up email nurture series or a way to take care of them. Don't ask them to marry you on the first date, right, Sarah? So
right.
I think we'll get to do that this year, and I might be hiring for that as well. I might just spend some more money to get money.
Yeah. Well, so many good lessons in growing the right team, including having to do some weeding, learning to think in return on investment, right? Shave the money that isn't bringing what you want in and reallocate that to something that will bring in financial return or time return or impact return. The power of building relationships, holding that integrity as a leader of the organization, and balancing that with your love of people and building those solid relationships. So many gold nuggets in here for folks. And the revenue, that power of focus. The message here is not do sponsorships. Maybe they're right for your organization, maybe they're not. It's about not getting distracted. And, just to highlight, working with Sheri for 4 years now, right? All 4 years. And like we focused, there was a year you really focused on increasing membership, and with that registrations for convention, and you focused on sponsorships, and every hint, and it's not like you didn't have to say no to temptation or requests again and again to do other types of revenue generation, but you did. And I think that has really paid off. And now with that, the skills you have gained, I'm sure you're going to hit 3 or 5 million really, really soon. I see
Well,
that for you.
well, and even with the sponsorships, digging a little deeper there, it's not about having 500 contacts. I do go to conferences like NAB or the All American High School Film Festival to pursue new relationships, but I don't want 500 surface relationships. So I've been diving deeper with the 20 to 30 and building that partnership. We're always open to more. So anybody listening, please come my way if you want to come alongside STN and empower young filmmakers and broadcast journalists. But it was quality over quantity for sure.
I love it. Well, before we close out, I'd love for you to share a final tip or a repeat of something we discussed today that if folks leave with just that one thing, what is it that they should leave with?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just happy for the journey to be here. I consider this my pay it forward time of my life. I had the time on set, not to say I won't be back someday, but I'm working with junior high and high school students and their teachers coming alongside them. And so that's rewarding. So I would say make sure your heart's in it too. And in the tough times, me coming straight from the gym sometimes to our calls or the beach back when I lived in California, I had to find outlets that worked for me. And you will need that thick skin. That's very Hollywood of me too. But it's true. It's not personal. It's business. And those tough decisions weighed on me. But I always found a safe place to vent. And then also surround myself with a core group of people in my personal life that know who I am, that can remind me when I call crying or whatever it is. It's just a budget. It's just a convention. It's okay, but your girls need you and you are this and you are vibrant and you are fun. So, remember who you are. Don't take it too seriously and don't be afraid to pin things as we talked about, because if you're spread too thin, you're going to crack. So we've been trying to right my ship from the beginning. There was some leak cracks in the foundation. So we've fixed those and now we're definitely on a healthier path, but that doesn't mean there won't be bumps ahead, an iceberg ahead. So yeah, always keep learning, keep fine tuning what you're doing, and don't be afraid to be true to yourself and change things up if it doesn't feel right.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Sheri. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And
Likewise.
and I'm looking forward to continuing being part of your journey and watching your journey. It's really been
Always.
incredible.
Well, I
And
tell you all the time, I want to tell everybody I would have quit 10 times if it weren't for Sarah. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. So you're part of our family. I think not everybody stays for 4 years. And I just put you into my budget. It was just an assumption that training was going to be there. So our celebrations are shared with you. Thank you for all you've done to support me behind the scenes and in the trenches. So
it is really, really my pleasure. And not everybody, I mean, the consistency of our relationship, I'm sure, is the consistency that you've had in your other relationships. And to me, that, that's what gets that, 500, almost 500% growth is from consistently putting the journey might not be consistent. There are a lot of bumps in the road, but you can show up consistently for yourself. You can consistently put in the work, put in the thinking to get there. And when I see people who succeed, it's people like you who really just keep putting it in and refining and making the changes. And they don't say, they don't quit. They might say, they all say I'm going to quit, but they don't quit. And they keep searching for that. There is a better way to do this. If I'm not happy, I'm going to change it. So really, what a good example you're setting for folks. All right. Well, and also thank you out there for listening and for everything you do to make your communities better, our communities better. And thank you for not quitting, even if you say you're going to. You can do us and everybody else a favor by sharing this episode with somebody who you think would benefit from it, as well as liking and subscribing wherever you are listening to this podcast. It helps the algorithm deliver it up to more people who it can help. Until next time, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.